Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Memches Amud Beis. 3 lines from the top. The Gemara has stated that the maximum amount of dough that one can use to knead for Pesach, they can still be shomer and protected from becoming chametz, is, according to Rav, 1 1/4 of a kav. And incidentally, that's the amount that is chayiv and challah. The Gemara now brings another opinion. Amar Rav Yosef, Hani Neshei Didon, Noog Lemepo, Kapiza Lepischa. Rav Yosef said that the women by us, they would need the amount of kapiza for Pesach, which is 3/4 of a kav. Omar le Abaye. Abaye then says to Rav Yosef, My daitich l'chumra. What is your opinion? To be machmir. That's why you support these women to then only need the amount of 3/4 of a kav. Chumra da'asi lidei kulahu. This is a chumra stringency that will lead to a leniency. Because after all, they call mafkola mechala. This will then prevent the obligation of having to be mafrish chala. Omar le, Rav Yosef retorts and says back to Abaye, the alvdon ke Rabbi Eliezer. We do like Rabbi Eliezer. The Tanya, it states Rabbi Eliezer oimer haroide v'noisen l'sal, one who removes the dough, the loaf of bread from the oven while it's hot and puts it into a basket. Mitzarfin lachala, those loaves will then mitzaref to the shear of chayiv, to that mechayiv a person for challah. V'om Rav Yehuda Mashmul halacha Rabbi Eliezer. And the halacha is indeed like Rabbi Eliezer. So we follow that indeed, even though they only need 3/4 of a kav of dough, which is what they put inside the oven each time. But when they take it out and it's still hot, it's mitzaref in the sal to make a chiyuv and challah. So it's not a chumrah that's osi lidei kula. It's a chumrah. And indeed you will then also be mafresh challah. Omar lei, ayvaha itmar Allah, that was stated on this Brisa that you just quoted me in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Lo shanu ela kikarois, shel bovel, shenoishchais zumizu. These loaves that are put into the oven are round, and they're round and wide, so that they come in contact with the other one, whereby if you would pull one to the other, it would pull apart. It would be attached to the other one. That's when we say that when you remove it and put into a basket, it's mitzaref to the shear of a challah. Aval ke'ochin loy. But if they are thin and they are long, whereby they do not come in contact with each other when they are in the oven, then they do not combine in the sal. Ha'it ma'alo. But we have another statement that indeed says differently about this brayso, the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer. Omer Rabbi Chanina, afilu ke'ochin. He says even if the loaves inside of the oven do not touch one another, they're thin and they're long. In other words, the question was, matzos themselves are thin and long. So if they are not touching each other, they're not staref. On that we bring the opinion of Rabbi Chanina, who says that according to Rabbi Eliezer, even if they do not become attached to one another, because they are thin and long, thereby that still is going to then mechayiv them in challah, and therefore our matzahs are such, and whereby you'll be mechayiv in challah too. It's not going to be a chumrah that's asili de kula. Boy, Rabbi Yirmiyahu now asks about this hitzarfus in the sal. Mahu. If you have a board, doesn't have borders, it doesn't have any walls around it, it's a flat board, and you put the loaves of bread that were taken out of the oven into this board. So not a classical sala basket. Mao, what's the din? Is it mitzaref or not? What are the two tzdadim? Says the Gemara. Toich kli bo'inan v'haleka. Does it have to be inside of a kli? That's something that's mekabel, kli that's mekabel, which this doesn't have. It doesn't have walls around it. It's a flat board. And therefore, it is not mitzaref to make a shiur. Or dilma avir kli bo'inan v'ha'ika, or you just need the air space together, and therefore they share the same air space on top of the board, whereby it is mitzaref to the shiur. The Gemara leaves it teku as an unanswered question. Tanya Rabbi Eliezer Oimer Hasal Mitzarfin. The Brisa brings that Rabbi Eliezer is that the sal itself is mitzarfin. It combines them. Rabbi Yeshua Oimer Tanur Mitzarfin. He says the fact that it's put into the tanur alone, even if they're not attached one to the other, they're not noishchois zu bezu, it's still mitzarif alone. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Oimer Kikarois Shel Bavel Shenoishchois zu mizu mitzarfin. It has to be that they are going to be attached, and they're noishchois, they are biting one another, they're going to be attached, that if you pull one away from the other, it would come out, that is taking from the other one, then it's mitzarif in the tanur. The Gemara now brings the next Mishnah in regards to the process of baking the matzos. Says the Mishnah, Ram Gamliel Oimer Sholosh Noshim Loshois Ke'achas. Ram Gamliel's opinion that 3 women can knead the dough together. In other words, each one will have their dough and they'll knead it at the same time. Whereby one will then put its dough inside of the oven, while the other 2 are having to wait till their turn is ready. In other words, Rabbi Gamliel is not concerned that it will lead to chametz, even though there is going to be a period of time that is a waiting process between those doughs that were needed, and by the time it will be put finally into the oven. The Chachamim argue. They say, Shalosh Nashim Oiskus Batzek. It has to be that 3 women are oisek in their botzek. At the whole time they're involved, they're going to then be processing this botzek. As follows, the Mishnah explains, there are 3 different parts to the process of baking matzahs. There's the lisha, the kneading of the dough. There's the part where you're going to then set the dough, or being oreches the dough, by shaping it and forming it. Then you have the third process when you put it actually into the oven and it's baking. So says the Mishnah, according to the Chachamim, who argue on Rabbi Gamliel, and say, Achas losha, one woman is kneading the dough. That's her dough. Ve'achas oreches, while the other one is setting and shaping the second dough. Ve'achas oifo, and the third woman is baking. That means that each one is involved in the process of using the dough entirely. They're being oisek in the dough while the entire process is going on. Nobody leaves their dough unattended and waiting just for it to be put into the oven, as the Rabbi Gamliel did say. Rabbi Akiva also argues on Rabbi Gamliel. He says, Lo kol hanoshim v'lo kol ha'etzim v'lo kol ha'tanurim shavin. There's different circumstances that cause then the potential for chametz, for the dough to become chametz. And therefore different women have different speeds and efficiencies. So too different ovens are different efficiencies, and so too the various wood that is used. How much wood, if it's dry or if it's wet, etc. The Mishnah concludes, Zeh haklal, this is the general principle, and these are the words of the Chachamim. Tofach, if the dough begins becoming nafuach, becomes getting a little bit bloated, then tiltoish bitzoinin, then quickly put some water on its surface to then stop the process of any chametz from taking place. Says the Gemara, bring the following brisa, Tanu Rabbanon, Losha hi mekatefes. And as here the brisa explaining the expanded understanding of what the Chacham said in our Mishnah, that you have to have 3 women that are constantly working on the dough. Tanu Rabbanon, Losha hi mekatefes. The woman who was kneading her dough, when she's done kneading, then she is mekatefes. She then goes ahead and shapes the dough. Vechaverto losha tachtel. Then her friend, the second woman, she begins kneading her dough. Mekatefes hi oifo. When the original woman, the first woman who did already the kneading and then subsequently did the shaping of her dough, she's oifa, she puts her dough into the oven. And the second woman, who already kneaded her dough, now goes ahead and shapes the dough. And the third woman now begins kneading her dough. So we have 3 women, each one is doing their own stage of the process of the baking. Oife hi losha. when that original woman got to the stage where she is putting her dough into the oven, then she begins now kneading a new piece of dough. While her friend, the second woman, then she now bakes in her place. And the third woman goes to the stage of now preparing her dough by forming it. And the Brisa says means they continue that process again and again. Take a look at Rashi. It's interesting, this word chalila that we see many times. In Shas it says v'chein choizros chalila. Chalila is lashon machul. It's a lashon of a circle, a dancing circle. Saviv saviv. Just as you go in a continuation in a circular fashion, it continues. So too over here, the word chalila means that it's going to then continue in this way again and again, round and again. The Gemara continues, so long as they are all the time they're involved, they're oisik in the dough. Eina boli de chimutz. Then it's not going to come to chametz because they're constantly involved with the processing of the dough, being oisik in the dough. The Gemara now quotes Rabbi Akiva in the Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva oimer loy kol hanashim v'chulei. He says all women and all fires, all ovens, all wood is all different circumstances that have different ways of affecting the potential chimutz of the dough. Tanya, the Gemara brings a Bryce Amar, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva states the following and challenges Rabbi Gamliel. Danti lifnei Rabbi Gamliel, he put it towards Rabbi Gamliel the following argument: Yilamdeinu Rabbeinu benoshim zrizois or benoshim she'ein zrizois. He's ma'arer to Rabbi Gamliel. Are women zrizois? Do they have all alacrity? Or some are a little bit lazier, not as efficient as others. Be'etzim lachim, oy be'etzim yeveshim. Also different types of wood that is used for the baking process. Some are drier and some are more moist, which again affects the way that the chametz might come to then affect the dough. Betanur chama betanur tzornein. Is the oven hotter? Some are not as hot and less efficient. Or Marli, Rabbi Gamliel's response back to Rabbi Akiva was, Ein lacha ela ma sheshanu chachamim. Indeed, there was no distinction that the chachamim made, and therefore the only klal that they made is as follows: Zeh klal, tofach tiltoish b'tzoynein. Only if you see that the dough begins getting a little bit swelled up, nafuach, then put cold water on it. Other than that, we don't see any restraints from the words of the Chachamim. The Gemara now brings the following Mishnah. The Mishnah over here is talking about a processing of leaven of chametz that is not complete. And therefore, this type of dough is formed as chametz nuksha, midirabanan. It's a type of chametz. And we learned previously that one has to get rid of such chametz nuksha before Pesach. States over here, seiur. What is seir? Again, seir is not saor. Saor is chametz gamur and is able to actually cause other things to leaven, like what's called sourdough. That's what we're not talking about. Seir is something else. We're talking about something that is not yet, it's an immature type of leavening. So it says over here, the din of seir is yisoref. You have to destroy it, you have to burn it. However, if a person eats seir, then he will be potter, meaning he'll be potter from even malchus, and certainly from kores. Siduk, however, yisaref, when it's siduk, when the dough gets cracks, that you have to burn. And if you eat it, you'll be chayiv kores. In other words, it's considered to be chametz gamur. Now the Mishnah defines what exactly is seir and what is siduk. Says the Mishnah, Ezehu seir. What is considered to be seir that we said you have to burn it, but if you eat it, you're not going to be chayiv, you'll be potter. Bekarne chagovim. The Mishnah says it's when you have two cracks that are going in different directions, just like the antennas of a grasshopper. Siduk. What does it mean, cracks? That we said the din would be that if you were to then, first of all, you have to destroy it by burning it. If you were to eat it, you'd be chayiv kores. Shenisarvu Sedokin Zebeze. Div Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says Sedokin refers to when there are many cracks on the dough itself, and they even combine one to the next. Those are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Notice Rabbi Yehuda defines again Seyor to be that it is Karnei Chagovim, and Siduk to be many cracks. The Chachamim argue on Rabbi Yehuda's definition, and he says, if one gets to either stage, even if it's going to be what you call Rabbi Yehuda to be Seyor, Karnei Chagovim, he'll be Chayiv Kores for eating that. Certainly when it gets to the stage that you defined as Sdokim. Ve'ezu Seyor, so what therefore, says the Chacham, is Seyor, that you would be potter from eating when you would eat it, and therefore they define it as Kol Sheichsifu Panov Ke'odam She'omdu Sa'aroisov, when the dough becomes pale, just like a person who's scared, he's in fright, and his hairs stand up, his face becomes pale. Says the Gemara to expand with the following Brisa Ton Rabbanon, Ezu Seyor. The Brisa asks, what is considered to be Seyor? Says the Brisa, Kol Sheichsifu Panov Ke'odam She'omdu Sa'aroisov. Just like we saw the words of the Chachamim in our Mishnah, that it's defined as the dough becoming pale, as a person would become pale when he's in a fright. Siduk kekarnei chagovim. Di Rabbi Meir. Siduk is a reference to when it's karnei chagovim. That is considered to be something that if a person would eat it, he would be already chayiv kores. Be'chachomim oimrim. So in other words, before we go weiter in the Brisa, this Brisa states that Rabbi Meir is the opinion of the Chacham in our Mishnah. But now the Brisa goes on to say V'chachamim oimrim, which really is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah. V'chachamim oimrim ezu seyor. What is seyor? Kekarni chagovim. Like you have two cracks, again, that are in going different directions, like the antennas of a grasshopper. Siduk is shenisarvu sdokin zebezeh. Siduk is when you have many cracks that even come and cross over one to the other. And these and those will be chayiv kores. So seemingly these are a continuation of the words of the Chachamim, whereby this is the words of really Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah. Frag the Gemara, if that's so, it states in our Mishnah, Seyor Yisorif, Va'oichloi Potter, Di Rabbi Yehuda. He says, Seyor, you have to destroy, you have to burn. But if you eat it, you're going to be Potter. You're not going to be Chayiv Kores. Answers the Gemara, Eimo LeRabbi Meir. According to Rabbi Meir, V'zeh v'zeh ha'oichloi Chayiv Kores. If you get to the stage that's going to be even Karnei Chagovim, it's going to be two cracks that are in different directions, like the antenna of a grasshopper. Even that will be chayiv kores. Kol shekain siduk. Or Rava comes to explain this shita. Why, if it's only karnei chagovim, would be chayiv kores for eating it? My time with Rabbi Meir. Why is he so strict? Why does he say that he's chayiv kores if it's only karnei chagovim? Because he explains, Ein lecha kol sedek v'sedek milamalo. If there always going to be on the surface of the dough two sdokim, two cracks, like the antennas of a grasshopper, you should know it's a telltale to the cracks that are already beneath the surface, whereby it's already a stage of chametz.